Well, for more on what is happening in Russia, France 24's Nick Holdsworth joins me now on the line. Nick, 1,300 people being arrested in what are the largest protests in Russia since the start of the war. Are they being centrally coordinated by a group of activists, or do they appear to be relatively organic?
These appear to be organic protests. Since the jailing of Alexei Navalny, basically there is no central coordination for such protests as there used to be when he was still free. What appears to be happening, from what I could see last night, was a lot of stuff on social media, people posting saying, let's gather here at this square at this time tonight in Moscow, St. Petersburg, or Yekaterinburg, or other cities where protests occurred. I was having a look at Russian social media channels. There are plenty out there. Some of those protests were tiny. There were pictures from a Siberian city of just a few people and a young woman with a poster being taken away by the police. And then a little bit later, with the time changes across Russia, there in Moscow, really quite large protests popping up now on Facebook, messages from friends, one saying he'd been arrested, a little bit later, update, I am with these people in this police station. He mentioned quite a well-known Russian poet, Yevgenia Lavut, and others who had been arrested with him. So these are not just young kids. These are mature people in their 40s and 50s, as we've seen from that package just then. Mothers going out saying they don't want their sons to be thrown into this war in Ukraine. And although the protests were relatively small and they were quickly quashed, it is significant that Russians came out in such numbers last night. As we've just heard, that's the first time anything of this kind has occurred since February 24th and 25th at the beginning of the invasion.
And in the aftermath then of the protests, what are you hearing about what's going on in the Kremlin?
Again, it's very hard to tell because there's nothing official or confirmed, but there is plenty of information out there to know where to look. Word has it that Putin has been thinking about this mobilization for months now. And as we've seen from Western intelligence sources, it's probably too late to have any impact before the spring in order to get people in, train them up, and get them to the battlefield. Apparently, the Russians don't even have the resources available to train these men they want to call back up. I've read that Putin was going to make this announcement. I think we knew he was due to make this announcement on Tuesday evening. Apparently, he feigned a coughing fit and doctors were called, and he put it off to Wednesday morning because he knew that by the time it was out, he would be out of Moscow. He'd be on his way to a pre-planned visit to a city north of Moscow, which is what happened. And that city happens to be close to one of his presidential palaces in Valdai. And Putin does have a reputation for disappearing from sight when there are problems. When Nemtsov, the opposition leader, was gunned down near the Kremlin in 2015, Putin wasn't seen in public for 10 days. And it is reported that Putin is scared of any reactions in the Russian public. And what he saw last night, although relatively small scale, would certainly have given him cause for concern. And there is also word that the 300,000 figure may just be the beginning, and that the Kremlin is actually expecting almost that many casualties, dead and wounded, in the next 6 months in the war as it continues in Ukraine.
Nick Holdsworth, for now, thanks very much indeed.